Sri Aurobindo and Blue Humanities. May I just introduce, I will introduce Dr. Sarani Ghoshal Mondal. Yeah? So Dr. Mondal has been working in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, NIT Goa, since 2013. She has delivered more than 50 invited lectures on literature, culture, and comparative mysticism in India and abroad. She is the recipient of the Nolini Kanto Gupta Memorial Award for her contribution to Sri Aurobindo's literature. She was the editor of the special issue of JIWS 2025, published by Bridgewater State University in the US. May I introduce also our Professor Goutam Ghoshal, PhD, D.Lit, is former professor and head of Department English, Vishva Bharati, Shantiniketan. Apart from Tagore and Sri Aurobindo, his areas of interest include Sri Aurobindo's prose style, Sri Aurobindo and world literature, notes on prayers and meditations, a comparative study of Tagore and Sri Aurobindo and others. He co-edited a reprint of James Cousin's 1917 book, New Ways in English Literature, which carried a long introduction to Sri Aurobindo's theory of poetry. Professor Ghoshal is the recipient of the Sri Aurobindo Puroshkar and the Nolini Kanta Puroshkar, and currently Professor of English, CCOM Skills University, and co-coordinator of the English department in Biswa Bangla Vidyala. I got it. Welcome, thank you. Much gratitude for everybody and all the speakers and the festival. Thank you, please.
Yeah, it's working. I'll just check. I have to say change all the time? No, you just should not, it's not like TV. You will stay here, no problem. Okay, I'll switch on.
We need to look at the mics.
Fix it. It's okay, but I need to let you know.
So this is a new area, completely new area, and we have been trying as collaborators on Sri Aurobindo studies. We have been trying to contextualize Sri Aurobindo in academics, in contemporary theories, and how Sri Aurobindo is related to all the modern theories from which he is excluded. And he is almost kept aside from the mainstream of academics because of this lack of knowledge, I would say. And Sarani has been trying, and I am doing a little bit of assistance, to place Sri Aurobindo in the context of Foucault, Lacan, and all the major theoreticians and ecological humanism. And so this is important because we think of Sri Aurobindo only as an avatar of Sri Krishna. But when I claim that there is no greater event after Shakespeare in the language, I have to prove it. Now that is why we are trying to contextualize Sri Aurobindo in the context, and this is one area which has come up recently. And Sarani has been working on ecological humanism with reference to Sri Aurobindo. And this time, the most talked about theory is blue humanities, in 2025. It started from 2020, but it has been much discussed throughout this year. And I won't spend much time. I will ask Sarani to take over.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ghoshal. You have explained the context. Thank you very much. And I thank the organizer for inviting me to be a part of this celebration. And yes, I believe as a researcher that Sri Aurobindo should not take the back seat in the domain of literature, because he has already claimed that I'm primarily a poet and a politician. Then we mostly focus on his yoga psychology. We see him as a nationalist, and then we don't talk about his poetry or literature. And when he said that he was primarily a poet and a politician, we have to add another point to it, that he was a poet critique as well. So, okay, now let me, so this is the background, and I mean, so eco-criticism, environmentalism, these are very recent, we can say, cutting-edge theories. And when we talk of eco-criticism, it is an interdisciplinary field of study that examines the relationship between literature and the physical environment. It uses literary and cultural theories to understand environmental issues, explore human and nature connections, and analyze how environmental concerns are represented in texts, films, and also in other modes of cultural expression. Can be painting, songs, but then there is a tendency of mystifying nature always. Eco-critics in the past, those who talked about nature, they didn't talk of conservation. So that is why the next theory, that is environmentalism, that comes into play, where an environmentalist is an activist who believes in and advocates for the protection of the natural environment from the damages caused by human activities, because we are in an age of Anthropocene, and we always try to put ourselves in the center. We have that anthropocentric bias. And when we talk of eco-criticism or environmentalism, we try to negate that anthropocentric bias, that man is not at the center. So it actually relates to Sri Aurobindo's integral philosophy, that it is an integrated world where all are connected, humans, non-humans. So this point has already been touched upon in the first session. The first speaker has talked about it from the scientific perspectives, but now the time has come that we should not differentiate science and the liberal arts and literature, because if you take up a text like Savitri, where we find this concept of interconnectedness, and at the same time, that time there was a very less time, but the Savitri text can be read as from the decolonial feministic perspectives, and also from that Shaivism, Kashmir Shaivism. I have already submitted my research paper to Peter Lang for this. So all are actually integrated, but I don't, as Professor Ghoshal has mentioned, maybe because of lack of awareness, we don't bring Sri Aurobindo's literature in the domain of discussion about. And further, I have been noticing that students are reluctant to take Sri Aurobindo's literature as a research topic, outside Pondicherry. So that is also there. Now, when we talk about blue humanities, these are the synonyms which can be used as maritime literature, wet narratives, hydrocriticism, ocean studies. It came up in 2020s, so very recent. And I will explain that later, but then here I want to just mention one point, that study of nature was there, but that was not very systematic. So it actually emerged as a separate discipline of study in the 1970s after the publication of Rachel Carson's The Silent Spring, and where from then on, we can say that it's the beginning of eco-criticism and environmentalism. And Blue Humanities falls under this umbrella term of eco-criticism. Now, the next, yeah. So this is the situation. So we all know that the 71% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. So which is an integral part of our existence. And if you see, the landscape is dominated by water. And I'll come to that also. And also a lot of films, fiction, poetry, and landscape have been composed and where water comes as a central metaphor. And when we say that it's a central metaphor, when we say that it dominates the landscape, it erodes as well as it creates. So both land and water are intimately connected. Yeah. So this is the water metaphor. Now, the first one as it goes, that how does water shape human histories, culture, and tradition? So we all see that all civilizations have come up on the both sides of the water, river. Then erodes, creates. When we talk of erosion, it is flood. Flood is often seen as a cleansing agent which cleans the surface of this earth. Then water is also a life-giving agent, and it contributes to the terraformation by changing its forms, because water, the flow of water, forms the landscape. And then we have other forms like river, lake, ocean. Then water also comes in the myth, legend, like in Greek literature, there are references to 5 types of rivers, that river of woe, river of lamentation, river of fire, forgetfulness, and river of hate. Then the book of Genesis, the Hebrew text, where we find an image of water moving out of the Garden of Eden to feed 4 rivers. Those 4 rivers are Tigris, Euphrates, Gihon, and Pison, but Pison is often associated with Ganga. And then in the East, water is considered as sacred. And then the next one is also see water as national spirit, because when we talk of river Volga, river Ganga, they are national markers. And then in American literature, Mississippi River, in Huckleberry's in Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, where we see that it represents the raw and adventurous American spirit, and which is not easy to tame. Then, so this is the maritime trade route, and we see that, I mean, water connects us, water integrates us. Then there are images where we see that this outside the temple, there is this tank to cleanse our feet, and then this Ganga Aarti. So, and then let us go back to the ancient scripture, Vishnu Purana, where we see that water is a giver as well, ocean is a giver. And when the ocean is churned, so many items came up like Kamdhenu, then the Uchaishrava, Airavat, then Kalpavriksha, Apsara, then goddess Lakshmi with wealth, Varuni, then Chandra, Parijat, then Dhanvantari, the divine physician who rose from the ocean holding a pot of Amrita. Then let us move to, yeah, so then, yeah. So this is how water is represented in the scriptures in Rig Veda, where the 2 oceans in the Vedas are called upper and lower water. So sky is also considered water, upper water. Okay, so these are different names like honeyed wave, Soma, and then this mandala 7, 95 and 96, which are hymns to Saraswati. Just I will read out a portion. I think I have quoted, yeah. So these 2 are taken from those particular Sukti, that the stream Saraswati with fostering current comes forth our sure defense. This is the first line, and then the second one where it goes like this: I sing a lofty song, for she is mightiest, most divine of streams, may we gain food and progeny. So here again, that water as a giver, that image is repeated, or it is there. Okay. Now this is the critical framework of my today's talk. Now, the Steve Menz, who has systematically presented it as Blue Humanities in 2024, and he gives us 3 aspects: physical contact with water, disorientation, and the emergence of the psychic new collectivities. Now, what he means by them, he says that physical contact with water is a necessity, but at the same time, as a researcher, I felt that it's not always contact. It's not that we have to swim all the time. We can touch water, we can stand by the ocean to feel its vastness, metaphorical vastness, or it can be a voyage, like when I'm on a boat. And then the last one is the emergence of the new collectivities. Now the second point is extremely important. When we are in a boat, or when we are voyaging, or when we are swimming, when we are standing by the ocean, there is a feeling of disorientation. That disorientation means to say that my situatedness is breaking down. That sense of place is breaking down. If that breaks down, my ego will break down as well. I will be a part of this collective world. So I will be a part of this cosmos. So in the first session, there was a question, psychicization. So this feeling of disorientation leads to psychicization. So we have to find clues from Sri Aurobindo's poetry. He didn't write like Steve Menz as a critic, but all these points are interestingly there in Sri Aurobindo's letter poetry written in Pondicherry period when he was in seclusion. And I will show you quite a few quotes from Sri Aurobindo's poetry. And then that's why what I did, I summarized it like we need to encounter or we need to confront water to understand it first, as a critic, as a poet. Then, we also call it post-anthropocentric perspectives, vision of pluralism and integral modernity. Why plurality? Because this new collectivities is actually pluralism. It is negating these separatist ideologies. Now, what Sri Aurobindo does in his poetry, he refers to water's fluidity, how it dissolves boundaries and how permeable it is. And he also says that in proximity to water will lead to a shift in our consciousness, and this vast ocean helps us recognize ourselves as connected to this larger ecological system rather than a separate individual. So this isn't, we should not call it a spiritual escapism. It's real, it's an embodied experience, and it's an embodied transformation. So ocean comes as an ocean, in Sri Aurobindo's poetry, is an agent of transformation of consciousness. Yeah, okay, so it's a brief biographical sketch. So this is a quote from the Life Divine. What he says, nature is fulfilled in man and man in nature, and both find themselves in God because the divine is ultimately self-revealed in both man and nature. So this world is the manifestation of the divine. So again, that feeling of integrity, integrality comes in. So it can relate to pantheistic idea. Okay, So these are some 18 poems are there. It's from the narratives. Apart from that, there is this unfinished play, Perseus the Deliverer, where also we find this image of ocean god. And the recurring image in Sri Aurobindo's poetry is the vast ocean under the night sky with the lonely moon. So this is being repeated, and these poems were written between 1927 to 1947. Now, R.Y. Deshpande, he has worked extensively on Sri Aurobindo's symbolism in Savitri. So what he says that in the last 8 years of Sri Aurobindo's life, his physical mind was opening to the supramental force and light. So as a secluded seer, he was deep into sadhana to bring down the divine into the mortal body. So what I feel that Sri Aurobindo is actually the lone moon traversing the night sky. Okay, so the lone moon and the vast ocean. These two are very interesting metaphors in Sri Aurobindo's ocean poems. Okay, so these are some textual examples. So this is very interesting, the Khalid by the sea. So in the beginning he says that wide ocean, ignorant of ships and lands, never made glad by toil of mortal hands. It's a criticism of anthropocentric approach, anthropogenic pollution. Okay. So, but then we missed out. So that's why I thought, like my previous paper was to establish Sri Aurobindo as an eco-critic. Now I want to establish him as a blue humanist because he started it long back. Then you see, I see beyond a rough, glimmering infinity, I feel the wash and hear the sibilation of the waves. Then to the Ganges, there is a journey of the river from Gangatri to Dakshineshwar. And then the third one, where ocean is as an invincible force associated with freedom and liberty. Then some more examples. Wild river in thy cataract far rumored and rash, rapids to the sea hasting, thrill, lust, become self-losing. Self-losing is again immersion to the vastness of the ocean. A sea motion and joy boundless and a blue laughter. So that critical terminology was already there because rivers or laughter is blue laughter. I'm a tree that stands out stingly from the infinite blue. Upper sky, lower sky, which comes from the Rig Veda. Okay, what the Western critics call it cryosphere, ecosphere, but then Sri Aurobindo directly takes it from the Veda and says that upper sky and lower sky. So I'm the quiet falling of dew, and I'm the unmeasured sea, I hold the skies. Again, that cosmic consciousness which relates to post-humanist position, because after humanism, it is post-humanism. So we are materializing his philosophy now. We are dreaming of an integrated world, and that also relates to post-truth as well. Individual is important in the era of post-truth, and in the era of post-humanism, blue humanities, there is a shift in the superstructure that man should not be at the center. Then all sounds, all voices have become thy voice, music and thunder and cry of birds, the laughter of the sea's enormous mirth. A secret harmony steals through the blind heart, and all grows beautiful because thou art. So manifestation of the divine in the ocean. I have become a foam white sea of bliss, so feeling of disorientation. Again, that if I relate it to the theory, then I'm a curling wave of God's delight, a shapeless flow of happy, passionate light, a whirlpool of the streams of paradise. So as I mentioned earlier, that vast ocean under the night sky and the lonely moon, so that the sea was a catalyst, ocean was a catalyst for him to go deeper into the spiritual adventure. Then again, silence round me, whiteness ineffable, white birds on the ocean diving and wandering, a soundless sea on a voiceless heaven. Then again it comes back. It is you can say it is Tagorian as well. On the waters of a nameless infinite, my skiff is launched. I have left the human shore. All fades behind me, and I see before the unknown abyss and pale pointing light. So he is on an adventure that is crossing sea. So here I would like to just remind you of his one life event. He came to Pondicherry from Chandannagar, Howrah, on a boat. So it was actually a voyage. So he had direct contact with water. And that feeling of disorientation was there. And it was, a kind of preparation for him for this kind of realization. So I believe that journey from Chandannagar, Howrah to Pondicherry was a very crucial point to transform him, to transform his psyche, I can say. So, and I think that influenced his later poetry. So finally, this is my conclusion, that ocean of possibilities, it's a journey motive and the transformative agent of human consciousness and expansion of consciousness in its vastness of the ocean. And that relates to cosmic unity. And here is this again establishes him as an eco-critic and at the same time, a literary environmentalist, not an environmentalist because he was not an activist in that sense, but he was a literary activist. So what he writes here, economic barbarian, makes the satisfaction of one's desire and the accumulation of possession his standard aim. So he is actually criticizing the culture of consumption, culture of greed, again that anthropogenic bias, anthropocentric bias, that we want to accumulate everything. So that relates to capitalism as well. So these are actually very interesting non-fiction and poetry. The only thing, we have to sit with his complete works and we have to glean the passages. So it is not like that nature writing. There is not a separate section like that. But then he started this activism long back before the emergence of eco-criticism as a separate discipline in 1970s. Okay, so thank you.
So thank you for your very, very original presentation. And this reminds me of my friend who was assisted by a taxi driver in Boston. And suddenly the taxi driver asks my friend, "Are you an Indian? Do you know Sri Aurobindo?" Then Devashish said, "Yes, I know Sri Aurobindo. Why?" Then the taxi driver said he lived 1,000 years ahead of us. So these things are coming up now, these theories, and excluding Sri Aurobindo, they are discussing these things in academics, where Sri Aurobindo had discussed these things many, many years back, and he's forever our contemporary, always moving with us. And in Sarani's talk, it was a focus on planetary waters, on the seas, and how ocean forms a large metaphor in Sri Aurobindo, because the mother liked the mountains, Sri Aurobindo liked the sea. And sea is an infinite possibility. And Blue Humanities is related to ecological humanism, eco-criticism, and it's a new thing which has come up in 2020, and now in 2025 it is the much discussed topic, excluding Sri Aurobindo. So why? Because Sri Aurobindo Sarani has shown by quoting, citing key poems, almost she has cited 25 poems, I think, and showing how the word blue, ocean, this merger, cosmic consciousness, cosmic identity, these things come again and again. And nature, not just like Wordsworth's nature, but nature which is animal being, animal world, nature, everything comes in post-humanism. Man, it is not no more the man's world. It is the world of the entire creatures. That is what post-humanism says, that the entire world, creatures, every tree, everything is important as man. So Blue Humanities is a new field, and I'm thankful to Sarani that she has been working on it. I'm trying to do a little bit of assistance, whatever I can do, but the entire work, the ideas come from her, and continuously she warns me, threatens me, don't write my ideas on Facebook, because these are new ideas, you shouldn't write these on Facebook. So I keep, thank you very much. Any question from the audience in case, because we have time? Yes. We have 5 minutes time.
Namaskaram. Thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh, for this wonderful session. I had no idea what Blue Humanities meant. And when you started off, I could relate to a lot of things. I have more of a comment than a question. I was particularly struck by your mention of Kashmiri Shaivism, because I come from Jammu and Kashmir, and I'm not sure many people don't understand that the mythological roots of the concept of Sati Sar, as mentioned in Vishnu Purana, the presence of Jalodbhav, and the fact that Bhagwan Vishnu dove down in the form of boar. That's why the name Baramulla is actually Varahamula. So with that connecting that mythological literature connecting to the social memory of Kashmiri society as the valley being a flood prone area, essentially, that got lost in the centuries of human civilization. And now today, when the 2014 floods hit the Kashmiri Valley, and people then started looking up Raj Tarangini to understand that it was back then in the 9th century that people were, the kings knew about the flood proneness of the valley, and they were able to tame the Vitasta, the Jhelum as we call it today. My comment here is that understanding ancient mythological texts in the context of their observation of nature, because I have felt, in the readings of Shankaracharya and the way he's positioned above the Dal Lake, he could see the Dal Lake receding, with the myth of Sati Sar possibly evolving before his eyes, and the valley revealing itself, because the valley is essentially a bowl. And that's how they were able to reclaim more land. So, modern interpretation, or more specifically, not just literary, but scientific interpretation of the natural accounts in the ancient texts, that is an area which has, gone vastly undefined. In fact, I've read verses in the Raj Tarangini where, they have managed to actually identify snow receding by the tree line of the birch trees, because that's the natural point where which divides the alpine from the plains. Another comment that I wanted to make was particularly when you mentioned that the ocean, and as Sri Aurobindo, when he arrived here, he felt his ego dissolving. Because he felt him immersed in the ocean around. The voyage from Chandranagore to Pondicherry gave him that realization. At the same time, the colonial era also kind of gave European civilizations this perception that just because they could rule the oceans, they could lay claim to indigenous lands across the world. While, of course, the Cholas had done it when they expanded the empire as far back as Cambodia, and even like modern instances where countries have carved up the oceans, and there are disputes over, say, the South China Sea and whatnot, and then we have issues like those of the immigrant on boat dingies between Africa and Europe, or the Rohingyas between Burma and Bangladesh and all. And do you think that the oceans today actually reflect, and this is my only question, actually reflect nationalism as a misinterpreted or perverted ideology which harbors on expansionism, rather than as a peaceful or harmonious merger?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that there could be a post-colonial context to it, but I'd rather be more interested in the modern context, or post-modern context, as you pointed out. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And this is a very pertinent question because a lot of Amitav Ghosh's non-fiction are related to this. So from that perspective, okay, so ocean is a contested site, we have to remember. So that point was mentioned in one of the slides, like ocean is a barrier. Ocean is again a reason for national conflict. If you see Padma, Ganga, Bangladesh, and India, then in Kaveri also, the Kaveri River issue. So it is a contested site, and as it was from the political lens, socio-political lens, as it was used for the maritime trade route. So the ocean, and then for migrants also, that illegal migrants also take the sea route and the boat. So ocean is a contested site, but at the same time, you see the first poem, that Khalid by the Sea, so there Sri Aurobindo is actually criticizing, but Sri Aurobindo doesn't criticize like a satirist. He's very subtle. So, I mean, the blue, it was marked, should I show you the lines again? So I think, back to the presentation. That struck me, and that's the unfinished poem. But maybe I don't know if Sri Aurobindo would have revised. Maybe he thought of revising it, but that comes in the first stanza, Khalid by the Sea. So there he's talking of that. Wide ocean, ignorant of ships and lands, never made glad by toil of mortal hands. So nature, I mean, from the nature's perspective, nature sustains us. It's a giver, it's a nurturer. But our consumption, our greed, and all these are creating these climate issues now. So Sri Aurobindo has, I have to look at his non-fiction, and I have to find out more details. But for this presentation, my focus was mainly his poetry. So did I answer you? Yeah.
Ma'am, thank you for introducing this very interesting blue humanities concept, and I think it's a field of criticism that is coming up. My question is, how justified it is to box Sri Aurobindo into a particular kind of criticism? Because as a student of literature, when we say he's a postmodernist or a modernist or a post-colonial, or he is defying certain ideas of being a colonist or whatever, I always feel that he's way beyond all these definitions. Of course, you have read much more than I have, but what I feel is, if we say that he's into blue economies, he's spoken as much about skies. So that also can come in blue humanities if we take only the blue term. If we go by blue economy, then yes, it is related to oceans and all, because that's a maritime economy that we have. But if it is correlating with, say, economy and humanities, then why are we leaving out skies? Because ocean is consciousness, sky is consciousness. And your first quotation from the Vedas, you also mentioned that he has taken even the image of sky as ocean. So do you see it as ocean also, I mean, sky also as ocean? Does that blue humanity include this thing? And one more clarification I would like to have from you is, you mentioned the disorientation part as being psychicization. You correlated that. Can you please clarify that?
Yeah. So let me come to your first question. No, it is not to compartmentalize him into a domain. Like what I, as a critic, as a researcher, what I'm trying to say again and again, that he is relevant to all these fields of emerging theories. But the academia is not allowing his poetry, his literature into mainstream discussion. So you take up any theory and you will find that at least 2 to 3 texts fall under that. Like as I mentioned briefly in the beginning, that Sri Aurobindo Savitri, has anyone thought of it that this can be described, that this can be analyzed from the lens of decolonial feministic lens? I'm not talking of compartmentalizing. I'm trying to.
This again relates to his integrality. He is a great integralizer and he is a great synthesizer. So
No.
everything can touch his knowledge.
No, sir, just one more. See, in academia, we have to specify the area and we have to specify the critical framework. So, like for academic degree, for academic research paper or PhD or postdoc degree, so if we say that he's relevant to every field, then the first question the selectors will say, then when he's above all these, when you cannot put him in a theory, when you cannot categorize him, then what is the point of research? The purpose of research will break down. So, but then over the years, I realized, in the last 2-3 years, I realized that you take up any theory, Sri Aurobindo's 2 to 3 texts are relevant. But what we are suffering from now, we don't have scholars, serious scholars who want to take up this and work. Like when I floated this Sri Aurobindo Savitri for the PhD advertisement, there wasn't any scholar. I didn't receive. So then what I did, I wrote a paper and I submitted it to Peter Lang, because maybe after 10 years or after 20 years, it will interest someone. So that's the answer of your first question.
Because since 1950, even when he was alive in 1949, the Illustrated Weekly started it. And they negatived all of Sri Aurobindo's poetry. They challenged his language, which only Setna defended then in 1950-51. In fact, my teacher was involved there, but later he turned to Sri Aurobindo, Professor P. Lal. Then his son is also is very good, is an ardent admirer of Sri Aurobindo, Anandalal. And now this continued, and when it comes to the Bombay school, you will be surprised to listen to the language on Sri Aurobindo. Adil Jaswala called Savitri an onion of a poem. It's a vast onion of a poem. The layers fall away, leaving nothing. Then what is his sensitivity? If you don't understand Savitri, at least you can try and don't give such rash comments. And then one after one other. Pritish Nandi said, when guest editing Sunday in 1978, gone are the days of Sarojini and Sri Aurobindo. Nobody considers them writers. Now there is no explanation to this. Why is Sri Aurobindo not a writer? And then the thing is, it's a large body of non-fiction. But very few people have noticed that although he has not written non-fiction as such, except for some stories, Sri Aurobindo was always writing fiction, because the materials of fiction and non-fiction are the same. And in the Life Divine, in fact, we had a long chat yesterday. There are many passages where he's speaking of his experiences and it reads like a fiction. Rebirth, for instance, the chapter, where he speaks of his experiences. And they are beyond the knowledge of any of the past sadhakas, beyond the knowledge even of the Vedic rishis. So, such a great integral thinker, philosopher, and in fact, rishi, poet, and you are keeping him out of the context of, and what would the next generation know about these things? And he's a link to the ancient Indian system, knowledge system, and the modern. and you are cutting off the link. So luckily, Indian government is taking interest in Sri Aurobindo. That is a good thing. And more and more researchers are coming out, like you also. You are doing good work. I saw your thesis. It was quite good. And you have improved a lot recently. So back to Sarani. In case there is a request, there is one question from...
didn't answer her last two questions. I forgot also. I'm so sorry.
Hello to everyone. I'm Dr. Ritu Tyagi, working nearby as Associate Professor of French at Pondicherry University. And I found your talk very, very relevant. I'm myself a person who's, looking at what we call now within the academic world as the ocean turn of studies. So we are, looking back at oceans in a big way. And as you rightly pointed out, we cannot miss out on Sri Aurobindo in that. And then the question also arises for us that why? Why is there an exclusion of Sri Aurobindo when we try to create a comprehensible framework for the ocean studies as such? There could be many reasons for that. And as the two of you were also discussing on it, I would like to take it further by through my understanding, there has always been a big, division between the academic and the spiritual world. The academic intellectual world operates very differently. Its methodology, as you pointed out, that when you lay out your thesis framework, there is a certain theoretical framework that you have to take, which is purely academic. You have to justify your position within the academia. So it works a certain way, which doesn't necessarily go very well with the spiritual understanding of things. There has always been this very interesting divide. One, I have a feeling that Sri Aurobindo, because of a lifestyle that he had, and also because he claimed also to be hinging a lot towards the spiritual dimension. So it is his connection, perhaps, you'll be able to comment more on it, mostly consideration of Sri Aurobindo as a spiritual rishi. We've had that discussion also through this, during the 2-3 days of this literature festival. It is that, bringing him closer to the image of the rishi that sort of keeps him away from inclusion within the academic circle. So this is one point that I wanted to, want you to take further. And the other important aspect is that we are at a very crucial point within the academic studies also. This is the first time that the academic world also is trying to look for other possibilities through Blue Humanities, through this whole question of eco-criticism, where of course the Indian knowledge system stands a very strong space. So I think this is the right moment, especially for scholars like you, to create a methodological framework, to extend the academic framework so that it allows reflections of these kinds. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Can I add something to your rishi point? Time permits? Okay, so how many of us are aware of the word rishi? How many of us know the connotation of the word rishi? Why the word rishi is always associated with spirituality? That's a wrong assumption amongst us. So we are there to make people understand that rishi, who knows whole life, the matter and the spirit, he combines both. So calling someone rishi doesn't mean that he has to be isolated as a spiritual guru, not like that. And the second thing I spoke in the beginning, that we talk of his yoga psychology. We see him as a nationalist, and we don't see him as a poet when he said that he was primarily a poet and a politician. Now, Goutam Da has already touched upon this Bombay school's politics, which I don't want to, I quoted those portions, but I thought that it's not a proper platform to read out all those. But then they said that Savitri is a slashy verse, and that was published across India in the dailies. So, and then another thing in Sri Aurobindo, in one of his talks or letters, I have the details, he wrote that I want to stay away from mass media. I can just read out the quote for you to understand. Rishi, who combines, who integrates matter and spirit, who blends, like who lives in the both, who is not just an ascetic, who lives lives four square, but then there will be an equanimity in his approach. No, that's how I no. Then I have to study a bit. Maybe Goutam Da can answer.
The Rishi is one who knows women better than a Casanova. Because the Rishi has known all the world. And then he is not stuck up in the world. He goes beyond it.
I'm not aware of.
Etymology is, I'm not efficient in Sanskrit. Maybe Sampadanando can clarify better.
Achha.
But the concept which Sri Aurobindo himself has clarified in the future poetry, that the Rishi means this, that he knows the whole world. And in a letter, Vivekananda says, I have a limitation. I don't know women. It was very interesting, because if you don't know women, you don't know the divine. That is what Vivekananda said. I have a limitation, I don't know women. But for Sri Aurobindo, it was his early sonnets, for instance, on which Sarani has written a lot, and which was most probably, textual evidences suggest it was written to his wife, Mrilanini, because he didn't interact with any women as such, except for his sisters. He joked with his sisters, he conversed with his sisters, but not with other women, only Mrinalini. And textual evidences suggest that there is a tension in the sonnets, because Sri Aurobindo was then very tense. He has to be busy in Sansara and at the same time in political activities. He couldn't give time to Mrinalini. So I think time is up. And yes.
Visits of Basura.
Visits of Basura.
So there's a description of woman's anatomy also, like how beautiful she is and all. So he's a man of this world, and he knew the world. That's why, all his writings are experiential. He could write, because without experience, we cannot write. So this just for you, letters on himself, where he says, I'm afraid. X is asking from me a thing psychologically impossible. You know that I have forbidden myself to write anything for publication for some time past. I am self-debarred from press, platforms, and public. So letters on himself, page 67, 2011 edition. Okay, so this is one reason he didn't receive much popularity. And after that, it was after that Bombay School of Poets, the quote, I'm afraid X is asking from me a thing psychologically impossible. You know that I have forbidden myself to write anything for publication for some time past. I am self-debarred from press, platforms, and public. And he did not allow any media person to Pondicherry. Okay, so that can be one of the reasons that's why he is open to misinterpretation.
His own aversion to publicity and those school 1950s, the new poets, because they had to gain their position. So if you don't remove the writer of Savitri from the scene, how can you become a Dom Morris or Anisim Ezekiel? Ezekiel is on record having said, anyone who thinks highly of Sri Aurobindo as a poet has no ear for the English language. So this is the Bombay School, and I was objecting to that. They came last year and they were extremely disrespectful to Sri Aurobindo, and I was not in favor of that. That is why I told I was against it. I had nothing personal against anybody here, but definitely if anyone is against Sri Aurobindo, I am against him. Thank you.
Thank you very much.